Oral questions by members.
Member for Surrey South.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The NDP's decriminalization policy of illicit drug use in hospitals is having devastating impacts on patients and healthcare staff. Yesterday, the BC Nurses Union confirmed that the contents of the Health Authority memo reflect the reality of rampant illicit drug use that's being allowed within hospitals and is compromising safety and care. Nurses face a daily reality of drug-fueled violence, from having drug smoke purposely blown in their faces to being kicked, punched, shoved, and even stabbed while bathrooms are being lit on fire. Mr. Speaker, why is the Premier refusing to prioritize the safety of nurses and patients over the use of crystal meth, cocaine, and fentanyl in hospitals?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. The government, in all of our efforts in working with the BC Nurses Union, in working with the HE, and working with the HSA, and working with communities, prioritizes the safety of our healthcare workers above all things. We also recognize, Honourable Speaker, that many people who present in the hospitals are dealing with severe health issues, some mental health, some addictions, some physical health issues that require them to meet the very high standard of being admitted into our hospital. There are clear policies, as there are in Northern Health, with respect to these matters. And those clear policies are laid out in all facilities in Northern Health and in all the other health authorities, Honourable Speaker. Possession and use of controlled substances are prohibited for all clients in emergency departments, any unit where clients under the age of 18 are present, inpatient psychiatric units and inpatient withdrawal units. This is just a fact, Honourable Speaker. It is absolutely prohibited to have weapons in hospitals. Now, does it occur, just as it occurs in the community, that events take place in the hospital that are contrary to those rules? They do occur. I meet with nurses all the time on these questions. And that's why we have taken unprecedented action, not because of the BC Nurses Union, because of nurses, but with them to improve access to security for all reasons in our hospital, because of the priority we give to protecting those who do the extraordinary task of helping people get well in acute care settings.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The leaked memo couldn't have been more clear that this government is not prioritizing the safety of healthcare workers. Illicit drug use is rampant in our hospitals, and it's a direct and disturbing result of this NDP government's decriminalization policies outlined in a health authority memo. Under this NDP government, families face the dangers of meth, cocaine, and fentanyl use in spaces as routine as the local Tim Hortons and as critical as the emergency department. Shockingly, nurses say one of the most affected areas are maternity wards, where infants are exposed to toxic substances. So why? Why is it the Premier putting the rights of patients and nurses and newborn babies to be safe in a hospital over the rights of open drug use of meth, crack cocaine, and fentanyl?
Minister.
Honourable Speaker, the member talks about smoking substances in hospitals. They are prohibited, period. Does it mean that that never happens? Of course it doesn't mean that never happens, Honourable Speaker. Of course it doesn't mean it never happens. But it is absolutely not allowed to do that. And this is not anything that's changed recently. It was true 10 years ago, it was true 20 years ago, and it's true now.
Member for Prince George Wilmot.
Well, thank you very much. And nurses were listening to the minister's answers yesterday, and they were outraged by his response. To suggest that a memo from the Health Authority was simply poorly worded, and to dismiss the reality that nurses face every single day is nothing but shameful. It has gotten so bad that Victoria General Hospital has been forced to install safety alarms in the maternity ward to detect toxic fentanyl smoke in the maternity ward. Imagine being a nurse in the maternity ward where a blinking light means you now scramble for a respirator to deal with toxic fumes. That's the reality for nurses at Victoria General. Why is the Premier prioritizing a policy that facilitates, there's no other way to describe it, facilitates drug use, drug trafficking, possession of weapons over the rights of nurses and newborn babies to be safe from exposure to heroin, meth, crack cocaine, and fentanyl?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, it's very straightforward. The policy is very straightforward. It's not allowed, period, Honourable Speaker.
Members, wait. Please let the minister finish it. Minister?
Honourable Speaker, the policy of Northern Health and all the other health authorities are clear on these points, and they've been clear for decades. You don't smoke anything in hospital, Honourable Speaker. That doesn't mean, Honourable Speaker, that those issues don't occur, and that is why, Honourable Speaker, we've taken such significant steps working with nurses who I've met with regularly on this very issue, Honourable Speaker. That we, well, you know, the continuing narrative.
Member, please.
You know, they ask a question that's an extremely serious question for nurses, the ones I talk to. And, Honourable Speaker, they can listen to the answer. The answer is straightforward. It is absolutely not allowed, Honourable Speaker. We have added significantly 320 security officers to come in place to support our public health care workers at the behest and with the involvement of the HEU, of the BCNU, of the HSA. And we're going to continue to take those steps to see that people are protected, Honourable Speaker. It has not been allowed, it's never been allowed that you can smoke in a hospital, at least not in recent times, not since we changed views significantly on smoking some decades ago. It's not been allowed at all, Honourable Speaker. It's not allowed now. And Northern Health has explicit policies that say it's prohibited, and that hospitals are smoke-free. So the members may say that's not the case. They have explicit policies that says it is, and I encourage them to read them.
Prince George Wayalmount, supplemental.
Well, you know, and the minister stands up every day and touts the fact there are security guards in hospitals. It is absolutely appalling that we are in a state where we actually have to have security guards in hospitals so people can go to work and be safe. It's not just Victoria. It is not just Northern Health.
Members.
It is across the province. Robert LaBelle, a nurse of over 20 years at Shuswap Lake Hospital, wrote to the Premier a month ago. He describes walking into a bathroom to aid a patient, and I quote, "I was met with thick, acrid smoke and inhaled what turned out to be fentanyl," end quote. He explains how this danger could easily happen to an unsuspecting grandmother visiting the hospital and highlights that illicit drug use is not only repeatedly found in hospital rooms, it is facilitated. That is from nurse Robert LaBelle. How dare the minister callously dismiss concerns of the nurses like Robert that they are expressing every single day in British Columbia by trying to suggest that a health authority memo was simply poorly worded?
Minister.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker. And the opposition now is opposed to the bringing in service of security guards, of improving their treatment, of improving security.
Members. Member for Surrey South. Members will come to order. Minister.
We've had security guards, Honourable Speaker, in hospital for some time. What the BC Nurses Union and what the Hospital Employees Union and the Health Sciences Association asked for was an upgrading of that, was a deprivatization of those services, something that the previous government, of course, pursued as a matter of policy. And we have made those changes. and added 320 security guards, relational security officers, very significantly trained in 26 acute care hospitals, and we plan to expand that. It's not the answer to every problem, but it was specifically requested by the very nurses the member is talking about. So to be derisive about it, Honourable Speaker, to be derisive about it is not...
Member for Surrey South, please come to order.
To be derisive about it is not the right approach, Honourable Speaker. What occurs if people are smoking in hospitals.
Members, please continue and conclude. Stop it, please. Minister will conclude.
Thank you. It's absolutely not allowed, clearly stated in health authority policies, to smoke anywhere in a hospital, Honourable Speaker. And, Honourable Speaker, we are taking the steps to support our healthcare workers, to support the very nurses members of the opposition talked about, and we're doing it by working with them, Honourable Speaker. We supported and funded, Honourable Speaker, Switch BC, which is an organization that's designed to improve those things and was heavily involved in the relational security model. The Switch BC needed to be created because the agency supporting the occupational health and safety of healthcare workers was eliminated by the previous government.
Member for Prince George Wilmot's second supplemental.
This chamber and try to twist my words all he wants, but let's be clear. I'm going to hold him accountable for the safety of nurses in British Columbia every single day. And if the minister wants to talk about clear policy, how about a memo, Premier Minister? Here's what it says. Under direction from risk management and professional practice. It is a memo. Let me remind the minister how clearly the information is articulated. Item 4, patients can use substances while in a hospital in their rooms. They can either be provided with a Narcan kit or have one available. Item number 6, we don't restrict if they're dropping off substances. An item at the bottom of the list, ensure that patients know they do not need to hide their substances and can keep them in their belongings. How clear is that? So the minister can cry to absolutely point the finger somewhere else. This is on his shoulders. It is happening in hospitals every single day. And it sounds an awful lot like illicit drug use and drug trafficking to me and to nurses and to British Columbians. So here's the challenge. Will the minister today issue a directive to every single health authority that illicit drug use is not permitted, weapons are not allowed, and the safety of nurses and patients will be prioritized over the open use of meth, crack cocaine, and fentanyl.
Minister of Health.
Honourable Speaker, the honourable member asks a serious question, starts heckling before I even speak. You know, Honourable Speaker, I take these issues very seriously because I meet with nurses and healthcare workers, and we work together. We work together on these issues. Weapons are not allowed, cannot be allowed, will not be allowed in hospitals. Period. Honourable Speaker. Period. And that is health authority policy. It is clarified. There's a health authority policy. I'll happily share it with the honourable member. It is clear, Honourable Speaker.
Members. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It is, Honourable Speaker, absolutely not allowed. Honourable Speaker, we do not, and we work with our healthcare workers, because there are, Honourable Speaker, as the members know, a growing number, well, Honourable Speaker, You know, I take this issue unbelievably seriously. We work with nurses and health sciences professionals and healthcare workers every day on these issues. Because when, Honourable Speaker, when people enter our hospitals, they enter often with very significant healthcare conditions. And it's our job, for example, at St. Paul's Hospital, it's absolutely true that there's harm reduction on site at St. Paul's Hospital because of the very specific conditions of that hospital, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you.
We, Honourable Speaker, support nurses, support healthcare workers every day. And Honourable Speaker, you know, Honourable Speaker, this is an attempt to ignore the policies that health authorities have. They're clear and straightforward. I don't need to issue any...
Members. Question was very clear. Now let's hear the answer. Let's please. We don't have to repeat the question. Member, Minister.
When people
Conclude,
come to the
please.
hospital, we do everything we can to help them get better and to keep people safe. And that will continue to be our policy every day.
Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thousands of British Columbians face impossible choices: buy groceries or heat the house, keep up with bills or pay rent on time. Politicians are ignoring the real causes of the cost of living crisis and scapegoating putting a price on carbon pollution. One thing driving inflation is price gouging by oil and gas companies. Shell, one of the main proponents behind LNG Canada and a beneficiary of subsidies and tax credits in this province, made $28 billion in profits last year. We can't allow CEOs and shareholders to get richer and richer from climate destruction while average British Columbians pay the price. According to recent polling, 62% of Canadians say Canada should introduce a tax on the oil and gas sector's record profits. A windfall profit tax could help alleviate the high cost of living in BC. My question is to the Premier. Will his government stop giving a free ride to harmful industries and push the federal government to implement a windfall profits tax?
Minister of Energy and Mines.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you very much to the member opposite for the question. Let me address the issue of fossil fuel subsidies that she raises, and I think the member understands that it's been something that our government's been very focused on for far too long. We've had a broken system, and this government has taken extensive work to fixing a very outdated oil and gas royalty system, and in fact eliminating the largest subsidy on record, the largest one, the Deep Well Royalty Program. Mr. Speaker, going forward, we've taken strong action on industry like the LNG industry through our new Energy Action Framework, putting an oil and gas emissions cap in place, ensuring that all new permitted facilities are net zero by 2030. We consider that to be the way forward that balances the interests of all British Columbians, knowing we need to take strong action on climate, that we need to hold companies accountable for the emissions that they emit, and that we continue to ensure that all British Columbians can take strong action on climate. Thank you.
Leader of third party supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd really love it if the government would take strong action on answering the question I actually asked, so I'll try again. Shell took home $28 billion in profits last year. The question I'm asking the Premier is, will he push the federal government to put a windfall profits tax in place so that these companies that are causing climate disasters and costing British Columbians enormous amounts of money will pay their fair share? So my question again through you is to the Premier. Will he push the federal government to put a windfall profit tax in place?
Minister of, Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I think the member knows that most of our members on this side of the House care deeply about inequality in our society. And when we see most members of this House, I can't speak for the opposition, but Honourable Speaker, what I can say to the member is this. The federal government has policies and reforms that they're looking at. What we can talk to the member about is what we're doing here in British Columbia. And what we're doing here in British Columbia is we're making sure that those that are the wealthiest in our province pay a little bit more, so that we can ensure that everyone that is struggling in our communities has a little bit more support. That is the inequality that we fight for every day. Inequality in healthcare, inequality in housing, inequality in society overall, Honourable Speaker. We're committed to that work. We've been doing that since 2017, and we're going to continue to do that work in years forward.
House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Under the decriminalization and safe supply policies of this NDP government, open drug dens like Vancouver's notorious downtown East Hastings are popping up in small towns and communities across BC. What used to be big city problems are ravaging small communities in British Columbia as addicts are bussed from Vancouver and Victoria into communities all across BC. As it turns out, when government takes away tax money from working families who are literally living paycheck to paycheck and uses it to buy addictive drugs for addicts, we end up with more drug users, more crime, more chaos, and fewer safe streets for people and families. Who would have seen this coming, Mr. Speaker, other than anyone with an ounce of common sense? Mr. Speaker, in the beautiful community of Courtenay, in the Comox Valley, Cliff Avenue and 6th is the intersection where open drug use, chaos, and crime spills out into businesses and residential streets. My question, Mr. Speaker, to the NDP Premier, will you apologize to the residents of Courtenay and the Comox Valley for the NDP pro-drug use policies which have brought big city addiction, chaos, and crime into their small, safe community?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And given this member's history of how he treats the most vulnerable people in his community, I'm not surprised by the question I heard today. This continuously dehumanizing the most vulnerable people in our society is not a new trait. It's actually on brand for this new BC Conservative Party. Honourable Speaker, the suggestion that people are being loaded up on buses and moved to communities is one we've been hearing for a long time, but the data does not support it. The data shows that overwhelmingly the populations that are struggling in communities are people within our communities, our loved ones. They're the people that we grew up with, we went to school with. There are many cases our kids. And so, Honourable Speaker, the member talks about Courtenay Comox. We have been doing a lot of work in that community. The MLA for Courtenay Comox and I, working with Mayor and Council to address challenges in that community. There's a lack of housing available. There's right now a welcome center, a shelter right now that wasn't purpose-built, that wasn't ideal for the community. That's why last week we announced we're purchasing a brand new parcel of land. We're building a purpose-built purpose-built shelter, building affordable housing so that we can get people the supports they need. Get them housed, get them the supports they need, Honourable Speaker. That's how you get things done, not rhetoric, dehumanizing people, but working with communities to find solutions, and that's what we've been doing every single day.
House Leader, Fourth Party, supplemental.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It'd be nice if once this minister stood up and talked about detox and actually getting people to sobriety. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that this Premier's pro-drug use policies are also harming healthcare workers who are already overworked and overwhelmed, facing the worst staffing crisis our province's healthcare system has ever seen. Mr. Speaker, we learned that this NDP Premier is forcing healthcare workers to simply accept illicit drug use in hospitals, including fumes from smoking drugs, which already made one nurse sick. So to be clear, if you smoke crack in an ER in BC, that's fine, but if you're behind on your jabs, you can't work as a nurse, you get fired. Mr. Speaker, the problem with this NDP government is that no one in the Premier's office has any common sense. So my question, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, does he honestly think being cared for by a BC nurse who hasn't taken the jab is less safe for patients and infants than inhaling crack fumes?
Minister of Health.
Oh, thank you, Honourable Speaker. And of course, Honourable Speaker, it isn't allowed, it wouldn't be allowed. What the Honourable member said isn't true. And I don't expect a higher standard, Honourable Speaker.
Member. Minister will continue.
Honourable Speaker, and I think on all of these questions, from the overdose public health and emergency to the COVID-19 pandemic that the member also, for reasons of his own, has raised here, we take strong, evidence-based healthcare policies that focus on helping people. And we're going to continue to do that, Honourable Speaker, as that is what our public healthcare system absolutely should do. We need to treat people with addiction problems, Honourable Speaker, and addiction issues with healthcare responses. And that's what the public healthcare system is doing throughout. And I think, Honourable Speaker, to suggest otherwise is simply incorrect. To suggest that it would ever be allowed that someone could smoke in a hospital that way is incorrect, and the member knows it.
Member for Coquitlam, Millardville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, imagine that you're a young adult on a university campus, perhaps living on your own for the very first time. You're excited and mostly nervous. But early in the semester, you find yourself isolated and afraid on your campus as hundreds of your fellow students don keffiyehs and face coverings, chanting Intifada. They wear the uniform and shout the mantra exhibited by Hamas terrorists who slaughtered, raped, and kidnapped people your own age at an Israeli music festival on October 7th. Imagine what that must feel like. On February 28th, the Premier was asked about a potential referendum being proposed to the UBC AMS leadership. More than 1,200 UBC students signed the petition asking the AMS to cut all ties with Israel, including canceling the lease for Hillel House, a safe haven for Jewish students on campus, one that has existed for over 75 years. Jewish students have felt intimidated and afraid on BC campuses for months, and Hillel House is a safe space for them in this very difficult time. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to roll my two questions into one, given the time constraint. My first question was initially for the new Minister of Post-Secondary Education, who shared with me her belief, and I quote, "Government does stand up to anti-Semitism, absolutely," end quote. I checked, Mr. Speaker, to see if the new minister had reached out to Hillel House to check on Jewish students, to hear their concerns, to identify ways government can ensure their physical, emotional, and spiritual safety on campus. And I'm going to answer the question for her, Mr. Speaker, because I heard this morning again that in fact the minister has not reached out at all from the minister to Hillel House 2 months into her role. When the Premier was asked for his comments on the AMS proposed referendum, this is what the Premier had to say, and I quote, "A small group of students, I understand, is requesting that the AMS sanction a referendum about whether or not Hillel House at UBC should be allowed to continue to exist," end quote. He did, however, go on to say that there is a couple of ways to look at this. First is, obviously, it's illegal on its face. The BC Human Rights Code implicates the AMS just like it implicates all organizations, end quote. So, Mr. Speaker, the Premier's first comment is to minimize the impact by describing more than 1,200 signatures as a small group of students. Then he suggests that because it's illegal, the Jewish students should take comfort because they can just sue the AMS. The Premier refused to show leadership and instead passed the responsibility to the AMS when he said, and I quote, "There's an opportunity for leadership among the AMS leadership." Mr. Speaker, members of the Jewish community on campuses, in K-12 education, and the BC Public Service do not feel safe, and the Premier's lack of direction or action exacerbates anti-Semitism in our province. This is why members of the Jewish community have been calling on the Premier to create a plan to address increasing and rising anti-Semitism in his government and in the wider society. So my questions to the Premier, or anyone on the front bench who would like to answer this question. There's an opportunity for leadership for this government. When will the Premier and his government show leadership and share their plan to address anti-Semitism in our schools, in post-secondary education institutions, and in the BC Public Service?
Government House Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Thank the member for the question. And I think it's, first off, it's important to say that, we acknowledge the pain and fear felt by many within the Jewish community since October 7th. We've been hearing from members from the Jewish community. I have been meeting with members of the Jewish community from my community and sharing with them and hearing from them about where we can go from this place that we're in now. Now, I know that we have taken a lot of steps, and I think it's important to acknowledge that perhaps the member feels that we haven't done enough, but we're committed to continue to do more on this, Honourable Speaker. I think it's important for the public to know that since October 7th, the Premier made a statement in this House calling out anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. On October 30th, since then, Holocaust education was launched in all schools across British Columbia. November 15, we provided security funding for religious community and organizations. We launched a racist incident helpline. February 16th, we updated the BC Prosecution Service, Honourable Speaker, and we continue to work with the community to ensure ways. Now, the Premier did say in this House that we were hoping the AMS would show leadership, and then they did. Overwhelmingly, Honourable Speaker, they voted against that petition that was brought forward. It's a reminder that our communities are strong. Everyone wants to make sure that we continue to create safe and inclusive spaces. The Minister of Advanced Education has been meeting with every single university, meeting with the leadership on ensuring that they're putting in plans to make sure that everyone feels safe in their community. The member knows that this is a challenging file. There's a lot happening on this file, but making sure our kids are safe in school. This is not a Honourable Speaker, this is not a topic for heckling from the opposition.
Members, please.
I think this is a topic that is so important that we all should be.
Please conclude.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The member says this is what leadership is. It's all the work we've been doing, bringing back anti-racism strategy, bringing a Human Rights Commission, Honourable Speaker. We are committed to this work, Honourable Speaker. This is important. And since day one, since forming government, we have made it a priority to make sure that everyone feels safe in British Columbia. Yes, we have more work to do. We're going to continue to do that important work.
Members, the chair is willing to allow one more question as long as it's very brief, 30 seconds, and also provided that there is no interjection when the answer is provided, so we are not going way over limit. Member for Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gas prices are expected to skyrocket to up to $2.18 a litre. The NDP have caused the highest gas prices and gas taxes in Canada, but instead of cutting taxes, the NDP have blamed gouging. They set up an expensive website to duplicate GasBuddy.com, and then they did nothing. People don't want taxpayer-funded websites. They want relief at the pump. When will the Premier listen to British Columbians and cut the gas tax when it comes to gasoline?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We know that British Columbians are struggling with affordability. We know that part of that affordability, as well as part of their concern for their kids' future, is about climate change. That's why we have a strong climate plan, and that's why we take actions like putting $500 back in people's pockets through the enhanced BC Family Benefit bonus this year, along with a range of other measures that support affordability by keeping fees and rates low and stable, unlike the government that sat on this side of the House before us.
The bell ends question period.